Please help me in welcoming Ben He to Google. Thanks everybody for being here today. I really appreciate it. It's really nice to come and talk to Google like this because you guys impact so much of our lives, especially the way we actually communicate the things that we find funny. I'm sure a lot of lolcats have passed through the pipes of Google over the last couple of years. So I'm here to talk about what I call microhumor, and this is a part of humor that gets largely ignored by mass media. And I think in order to understand microhumor, I'll start by explaining the other humor that we are normally used to. And by the way, that's my Twitter name. If you want to tweet this and tell me what you think, I'd be more than happy to read that and include your feedback in my next presentation. So I'm going to start with a magic quadrant. So we've got reach, which is mass reach or private. So basically it's a meaning of exposure, how many people know about this specific subject item. And then we've got acceptance, which is some things are not really funny for a lot of people, and some things are funny to a lot of people, whether they know it or not. And I call that I agree, it's low-z axis. And when you put the two together, you get a quadrant like this. You've got, ooh, that's awkward. You've got the mass stardom. You've got microhumor, which is what I'm here to talk about today mostly. And then you have the, dude, you have to see this. Unfortunately, the two, upper left and lower right, I really don't have a great name for it. So that's why they're a little bit longer than the other two. So I'm actually going to overlay over this magic quadrant the humor and the type of content that we're used to. So this slide might take a little bit to read. So you've got Ben Stiller movies, which I think they've become more moved to the right ever since he did Tropic Thunder, right? And then you've got like racist jokes and sexist jokes that like most people don't agree are funny, but maybe they think it's funny in private. But everybody knows that it exists, right? And you've got the inside joke, which is on the bottom left-hand corner, the jokes that we only tell our friends. This is the type of content that a lot of us are actually getting really used to today through Twitter, through emails, through IMing, where we're sharing a little bit of our lives. And this is like the stuff that's overheard, or maybe the quote board in its form. And back in the day, if you remember those things from your dorm life, this is where it all starts, right? The inside joke. So I'm going to take an example of puns, which is a type of humor format we're very familiar with. And puns can range from, ooh, that's really awkward, like that's really not that funny, but I know that that's a pun, all the way to, there are some really great puns out there. Like, actually, I can't really think of one right now. But but most of the, hair salon and the pet news headline puns kind of fall under the, oh, that's awkward category, right? We've seen them all, like, what is it, great clips, right? It's like, oh, I get it, you clip my hair, aha, right? So I'm going to take this quadrant and analyze a meme that we're very familiar with. I've saved you the trouble of actually not playing this video, so I will not actually rickroll you. Well, that's the best applause I've gotten all year. Okay. So I'm going to talk about how rickrolling started. Right? It started out as duck rolling, which was on 4chan boards, they used to post a picture of a duck, and you'd click on a link and be like, oh, I got duck rolled, right? So it was a very private thing. A lot of people on 4chan found it funny, but it moved, right? It moved when it became rickrolling. It was still private, but most people found Rick Astley far funnier than a wooden duck. Go figure, right? So it moved to rickrolling. Right? So this is, a meme as it grows and evolves, and then it hit the mass and consensus, which was when YouTube decided on April 1st, 2008 to rickroll everybody by changing their links on the homepage. Like this was the total, peak of this meme. And then afterwards, after April 1st, after everybody had seen it, it kind of died off and said, okay, I've been rickrolled 16 times in a day. How many more times can I take the same joke? So it actually moved from one quadrant all the way to all four. And let me tell you why it moves. It moves from one quadrant to another. This little humor that was inside joke within 4chan. I always distract my own audience by posting lolcats. It moves because it's evolutionary, right? It was a duck roll, which wasn't as funny as Rick Astley. And then people thought, you know, being able to prank somebody by making a link go to a different place that we all assume is one thing and then appears to be something really ridiculous, it's a part of collective truism, meaning we actually understand this to be true internally, whether we had witnessed this previously or not. Timeliness, April 1st, right? April Fool's Day. What a great day to do a joke. So as the meme grew, it hit this peak because, hey, everybody needed a prank for April 1st. So YouTube picked this thing and made it huge. And marketing, because YouTube is so giant in terms of the world of videos, it had the biggest platform available for this meme to go viral. And you can literally see that on Google Trends. So in 2007, this is, you know, Google Trends of people Googling for the word Rickrolling. So it started as duck rolling. Nobody was looking for duck rolling. Like, nobody cared. It was a private joke. When it moved to another quadrant, as more and more people discovered it, people were trying to find out what Rickrolling was, and then they were Googling it. April Fools, it peaked. Everybody who previously wasn't aware of Rickrolling now knew exactly what it was, thanks to YouTube. And then afterwards, you can see it died down. It ended up at a slightly higher peak than before, but it's actually drifted off even more so since then. So you can see how this internal meme humor went viral literally by looking at Google Trends. Well, so let's go back and define microhumor, where this thing came from. And I'm going to overanalyze. And I love this one. This was actually one of the very first photos I posted on the Fail blog. The expression on her face is just priceless, if you can see that. And the fact that the Frisbee is within arm's reach, just outside, it just makes this perfect. So this was an inside joke. A guy who was taking photos of a Frisbee match decided that he wanted to send this photo around to his friends. And his friends decided that this was so funny that they suggested that he send it to Fail blog. And we posted it. Well, prior to the invention of a Fail blog and other things like it, this would have been just an inside joke. Haha, whatever her name is, fell on her face, faceplant, that's really funny. Well, this is exactly where all internet memes start. This little subculture, this little subgroup who finds something to be compelling enough to share with other people. Unless you can actually overcome the resistance within that small subculture where they all agree that this is worth sharing, the meme never makes it out of that group. So what usually happens is when you guys have an inside joke, right? A very good example of an inside joke that made it out is, what is it? That's what she said, right? Or your mama. That's pretty bad. But, you know, that's what she said can be applied to a lot of different things. It's a meme. Whether we know it as an internet meme or not, we tend to use the word meme according to the internet. But that went from person to person practically overnight. Like, I don't know exactly why it started. And usually with memes, you can't really pinpoint the beginning of it. But that's what she said became an idea that everybody kind of learned without explicitly learning it. So let's describe what is microhumor and what is not. It isn't Web 2. Whatever. It isn't new. It isn't really a meme. It isn't internet-based, and it is not the root of all humor. What it is that it's the first exposure to humor we've had as kids, right? When you guys were talking with your other, you know, third grade friends and somebody said something funny, and it was because the context of being a third grader in your little sand pit, you know, somebody did something funny, but you didn't recognize that as a mass media thing. You didn't, like, you laughed and then you forgot about it and then you moved on. It's most of why we laugh. The fact that I'm here today talking to you about internet memes is relevant to this subculture, this subgroup of people. Right? We're pretty much a very small community in the grand scheme of the world. Not a lot of people work for the biggest technology company in the world. Right? Not a lot of people spend most of their lives on the internet, like I do. Right? We share very much a commonality that we appreciate internet culture for what it is, something that's funny to us. And it is more intimate. And this is one of the reasons why microhumor tends to make it out when it's really good, because we feel somewhat of an ownership over it. We feel passionate about that little joke, and we want to share it with the rest of the world. So before mass media, microhumor was the force, right? Maybe it was the dark side, maybe it wasn't. But this was a thing that we were all used to. Like in the Middle Ages, the court, the king's court or queen's court had a jester. And the jester would make fun of other, you know, members of the royal family, or well, maybe he or she got beheaded for that. But, you know, maybe like other things that the king knew about. They wanted to share this thing called microhumor, things that were contextually relevant and funny to that group of people. However, things changed when mass media came into view, right? So if you look at the potential economic value of different types of humor, when TV came into view, the big upper right quadrant, meaning things that's funny to a lot of people, got the money, right? The balance completely became out of whack. Whereas before, in the age before mass media, the inside joke was the only thing that held sway because we didn't have the ability to communicate with other people and share this joke. So the balance went from micro humor all the way to, the stardom part, and nothing in between. Well, the internet's changing that, as you can clearly see and experience, right? I'm going to let you laugh at this first. This would never make it on television. It just doesn't work. But we find it really funny. What we're doing is we're refragmenting humor in mass media and mass culture. More people can find more things funny. Our tastes have become more broader. Our tastes have become more eccentric almost. And we're taking the power away from mass media such as television and radio into our own hands because we can go and find and share and filter the things that we find funny that maybe other people don't. It's because we can now publish things easily, because we can access and find things. We can find other people who share the same sense of humor. And there's a feedback loop that says, hey, that was funny. I think this is funnier. That's why memes work, because it requires a two-directional effort in trying to make something evolve to the next level. So we're growing, these nuts, right? These crazy internet people with their weird sense of humor of captioning cat photos with misspelled words. Where the hell did they come from? TV got, kind of blindsided by this, or mass media got blindsided. That's why they're so interested in this story called Lolcats and Failblog and GraphJam, because, well, who the heck liked this stuff before TV was around? Well, we probably did, but there was no way to access it. There was no way to share the fact that we liked it. And if you look at this ridiculous slide of people, right? The evolution of the dance, Chuck Norris. I mean, talk about a meme. Chuck Norris, who practically is a has-been on television, got a second win thanks to Chuck Norris facts, right? There's ridiculous sayings about what Chuck Norris could do. He can count to infinity twice. I mean, it's like, it's ridiculous, right? Like behind his beard is a fist. Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. Has anybody seen that one? Oh, yeah, see? Okay, I'm talking to the right audience, right? That was created because the TV writers went on strike. And they had free time, and they wanted to create a drama that they enjoyed. It's really quirky. It features, Doogie Howser, right? I mean, what an awesome guy, right? And that never would have been made if it wasn't for the internet. It was released online. iTunes picked it up. We all saw it because it wasn't on TV. We saw it online. And we probably told our friends about it. There was no marketing budget. Teh Zonde. Chocolate rain. Yeah, that's pretty inside there. This is a case where a very not talented person got on the internet, decided that he wanted to be talented, and made an absolutely ridiculous song called Chocolate Rain, which I don't even want to think about. So he ended up in a Dr. Pepper commercial, right? So this is a case where, again, some subgroup of people decided that this is so ridiculous that they wanted to share it with other people. I won't go through everything, but as you can see, things like this is how it all starts. So this is actually not the oldest lolcat, by the way. This is a poster from the 70s. The oldest lolcat that we found, and I wish I would have brought the picture with me, was printed, as far as I can tell, 1904. And I'm not kidding. Somebody who went to an antique store in Seattle found this postcard of a kitten sitting in a high chair, dressed up like a little girl, and there was an all-caps caption underneath the photo that said, "Mommy, where is my dinner?" If they had made an impact, like, done, that's a lolcat. Like, it wasn't even the predecessor. That would have been an actual lolcat. And this was because this is the beginning days of photography. They wanted to, I guess, make postcards that other people bought. And so the idea of capturing a cat is not new. I'm pretty sure if you go to Egypt, somewhere in the pyramids, there's a cat with a caption underneath it. "Mommy, can I have a sarcophagus?" I don't know. So I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about how we all got started. So Eric and Carrie, the co-founders of I Can Ask Cheeseburger, actually came here and talked to you guys about a year ago about the founding of I Can Ask Cheeseburger, and they can tell you about how they just went from having a blog that had a couple of pictures of lowcats to this massive, internet phenomenon practically overnight. I showed up sometime in April as the site was taking off. And the first time I saw it, I didn't get it. Second time somebody sent me a link, I didn't get it. By the third time I said, geez, I'm not going to go there again, but I did. And then I found something I liked, something that appealed to my sense of humor. And then I sent it to my friends. I said, dude, you got to check this out. Right? That's like micro humor in action. It appealed, some context of that joke appealed to me. I wish I could remember which one that was. And I said, I have to share it with my friends who share my sense of humor. And the site continued to grow. And in September, that's when I took over. We knew absolutely nothing about how to run this blog. That's exactly how I felt. What is this blog? How do you get these pictures? So in September, we realized that just like microhumor, the good solutions are the really simple solutions. So we focused on just making sure that you guys got the lolcats that you wanted. And we started growing like crazy. So that's millions of page views on the left, by the way. And we were profitable from day one, which was the other crazy part. So when I raised investment money to purchase I Can Ask Cheeseburger and these other blogs, the investor said, well, how much I'm going to have to put in? Because, can you make money off this? And I said, yeah, we can actually make money. That was the kind of the watershed moment when we had our first month's worth of revenues come in and said, oh my God, we actually didn't lose anything. And we kept on growing, which is very contradictory to what people believe about how new media works. Yeah, this one takes a few seconds. We were a blog posting weird cat photos and turning a profit, whereas other people doing great work, creating great content weren't. And there was something weird about that. And we kept on growing. And we added more blogs. I'm sure you know about Failblog and GraphJam. Failblog, we actually acquired from a guy in London in April of 2008. And I think that's the last big acquisition that we were going to do because the world has really changed since we started doing this. We've created this kind of cottage industry of people who post pictures online and try to make a living off it, which is bizarre because in 2 years, that is a really, really fast turnaround. Before we were really in existence, no one knew that you could actually make a living doing this. And now there's a bunch of people who have a part-time job at home posting pictures of whatever it is they find funny. And the odds of them actually making money are very slim. But so is becoming a Hollywood star, and people try anyway, right? It's this idea that you can affect the world with your sense of humor that seems to be virally infectious to other people. And I have no idea why I included this slide. Rest in peace, Michael Jackson / dude from Egypt. So we found the same idea to be true, that we could go out and buy blogs if we wanted to, but we could also build our own, like Totally Looks Like. This idea was inspired by... You guys remember Mad Magazine? They used to have a feature called, Separated at Birth, I think, which would feature like 2 celebrities. That's where this came from. All we did was we just made a place online where you can submit your own. And that Totally Looks Like was born. So as we added our blogs, we kept on growing and growing and growing. So that's August 2008. And I'll also share with you our planning philosophy. And we said, what we're doing is working so well. It's a little hard to read, but this is a song. We got some music. You just got it? Okay, it takes a while. But anyway, that's what GraphJam's all about. But we decided that 30 days of planning was just enough, that we did not have to plan out years in advance because, let's face it, we're a cat blog. And when you're a cat blog, you just want to live till tomorrow. And this has worked really well for us. Just focusing on what we do well, of posting other people's content that are funny according to other people's standards. Because if you go to our site, you'll realize that everything is voted upon. Like, we don't sit there and go, we think this is funny. We let the users decide. So not only do we crowdsource our material, we crowd filter the best of the best. So people started calling us a user-generated content pioneer, which is a very nice label. Which is like saying, the Earth would be mass media and user-generated content would be the sun because we create so much content. Blogger, my God, there's so much content on Blogger. right? So basically what UGC Pioneer means, people crazy enough to go sift through all this stuff out there, right? That's all we're doing, is trying to figure out how to take the best of what people are creating and send it and show it to the right audience. And this is our traffic growth. This is for until last month. We exceeded 200 million page views. And now we're on pace to do 1 billion page views every 4 months. And oddly enough, we now have the number 6 all-time watched channel on YouTube thanks to Failblog. So Failblog's videos came in about 16 months ago, 18 months ago. Somebody sent us a video and said, you should post this on Failblog. And I said, we don't post videos on Failblog. This is a photo blog, damn it. But we posted it anyway because I got overruled. And it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And we just passed CBS as the 6th most watched channel on YouTube of all time in 18 months. I mean, that's just crazy, right? It's just videos of people failing. Sometimes videos of professionals failing, but it's not rocket science. It really isn't. And a lot of these videos had been seen by other people before, and what we did was we used crowdsourcing to put that in front of the right audience and to allow them to decide what they believed was good. That's all it was. Also, the financial crisis helped, which then the word fail came into kind of vogue. So let's think about this. April 2008, I buy the blog. It starts growing. September of 2008, the financial crisis happens and banks fail. And there's a photo of some person at a Senate hearing of the banks. And she is holding a sign that says fail. I remember looking at that picture going, I better buy some more servers. And that was it. And that's our story so far. We keep launching a new blog every week, trying to test out what is funny and what isn't. The latest blog that we launched is a little cute baby product blog. So we basically, I was talking to Molly Wood, who's the executive editor at CNET, and she was basically telling me, you guys basically live in the world of extreme making fun of other people's failures or really cute stuff. And I'm like, oh, I didn't really know that. Like you guys, she said, we're basically doing 2 extremes of happiness, watching other people's misery or watching cute things. I'm like, that's really good, thanks. I'm actually gonna go back to the office and tell them about this. And this is the best part about my job, is that I come and I meet with other people who visit our blogs and they tell us what to do. Our mission statement is to be happy for 5 minutes, to make people happy for 5 minutes a day. And it's not some kind of wisdom I crafted from my little windowless office. It was actually something that was sent in to us by our users. They kept on emailing us and they said, hey guys, we love your blog because, it's my 5-minute break from the office. Or I print out lolcats and I take it to my grandmother who's recovering from cancer, and we share a laugh over it. She has no idea that there's this stuff on the internet. And that was really great. And we adopted that our mission statement because for us, the micro humor, the little joys we share with other people is what we specialize in. And if we can continue to make more blogs that make people laugh for just a few minutes, then we've won. So that's it. That's me. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, and I'd love to take your questions.
So if anyone has any questions, they can go ahead and come up to the microphone. That'll be right here. Go ahead and ask a question.
Don't feel too shy.
Or I can come to you if you have a question, if you'd prefer.
I'm gonna find some photos to show you guys. I think this was a crowd favorite, so I'm gonna repost that one. There you go. That's how I roll. I'm not sure how the cat got in there, but I'm pretty sure you can't force a cat into a tube like that. Yeah.
Question from San Francisco.
Do you know what your all-time most visited photo is?
Our all-time most visited photo varies because as we grow, the photos that we post at a later date tend to get the most views. So that's kind of a tricky question. So people have asked us, can you guys do a best of? I'm like, how do we decide that? I don't know, right? Because as traffic grows, the stuff we post on our homepage become more and more seen by more people. So I wish I knew that, actually. That would be great.
So would that be a cat roll?
That would be a cat roll. There's also a Subway cat, which is like a similar cat, but inside, like cat is by itself, and then it says Catway. I'm not sure why that says Catway, but it does.
It's great to have you here. Failblog has worked its way into a meditative process that I have every night before I go to bed. I log in and I start laughing because I used to look at the New York Times and it just got so depressing. And I'll be literally rolling on the floor, laughing, reading the thing. And when my ex was living with me, I mean, she just never got it. So
Is that why she's your ex?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I'm great to have a contributor to the
other
breakup
reasons,
of
but yeah.
relationships.
I won't go into that here.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit more about the theme you touched on in the on the meeting. Like people kind of get it, and people who don't, because I think not everybody gets it.
That's the interesting part about what we do is that we're serving up humor in a very fragmented community. Not everybody gets Failblog, not everybody gets I Can Ask Cheeseburger, not everybody gets Graph Jam, but that's okay with me. People say, well, this is not funny. I'm like, that's okay. Other people find it funny, and that's really who we're targeting. So that's why we've got 28 blogs now. Like we've gone from one cat blog to a network of 28 plus blogs where we try out new material every week. It's like being a stand-up comedian. If it doesn't work, we won't use it again. So we launched There I Fixed It, which was leftover content from Failblog. People will send us, There I Fixed It is a site that features horrible fix-up jobs. So like that shower curtain that's actually not attached by rings, but with like duct tape to the rod. So you have to basically climb under the curtain to get in there. There's a ladder that's been apparently, a ladder that's replaced the staircase. And if you look closely, the ladder is actually bolted into the wall, because it's been there so long. And it's actually a ladder on top of a ladder, which makes me wonder if that house owner is still alive. So it's stuff like this that was sent to the Failblog. We're like, this really isn't a fail because there's nobody actually falling off of it right now, but maybe we could start something else. So we started There I Fixed It. So it's things like this where, subcultures give us an idea into what they would like to see, and that's what we try. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I guess before lolcats came along, we had like all these really big forums, like Something Awful. Like I remember the days of the Oh Really Owl, which I love dearly. Yeah. And I was just wondering like how that, I think, have you thought about that factor and how that, in a sense, kind of maybe grew into this sensation? Or
actually, that's where it all came from.
Yeah.
So lolcats as a phenomenon came from 4chan, which then made its way out to Something Awful, Far Phased, all of those forums I'm sure you're aware of. And then from there, it made a crossover into kind of mass blogging world. And that's where I Can Ask Cheeseburger first started. So lolcats was an invention of a very sick group of people, also very creative group of people, right? It didn't really come from 4chan. Graph Jam came from a community on Flickr. So all these ideas germinate from somewhere else. And even then, if you think about it, those ideas germinated from a different era. So there's a woman named Jessica Hagee who's got a book that's really a bunch of graphs that she draws. Dimitri Martin is a comedian who draws graphs as a part of his comedy routine. And that's what was the inspiration for that. And I'm sure they will tell you that we're inspired by something else. So the idea of a meme actually having a starting point is really hard to pinpoint. But yeah, those forums were a very big influential group because they created a lot of the content that we know as the early lolcats today. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Question from San Francisco.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, by the way. Really appreciate almost all of your blogs. So thank you for wasting hours and hours and hours of my time, but in the best way. You were just talking about Graph Jam, and maybe I missed it, but that's the only one with really your content, right? You guys are actually that's not user submitted, is it?
Graph Jam, I think if I heard your question correctly, the question was, is Graph Jam user submitted?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it's all user submitted. If you go to Graph Jam, there's a graph builder /uploader, and you can go make your own graphs. What was really fascinating, it's a little flash builder, which allows you to make graphs without actually punching in numbers. If you kind of think about that, that's really crazy, right? Graphs without the use of numbers. You can draw a pie chart just by dragging a line and going, oh, look, I think it's about this much %. Well, that's what we found out. So we see all the submissions that come in through our system because the moderator looks at this stuff, and then we started seeing actual corporate company data. Like somebody decided Excel was too hard and decided that they want to make a financial presentation out of using Graph Jam's Graph Builder. Unfortunately, I do not know the name of this company because I would go short their stock tomorrow. But yeah, people do this actually quite frequently, and it scares the bejesus out of me because I'm pretty sure there's another Enron brewing somewhere. Yeah, everything we do is user submitted. We have a blog called It Made My Day, which if you've ever checked on Twitter, if you've seen the tag IMMD on Twitter, that's where it comes from. A blog called It Made My Day, which is either about something really nice that's happened to you or something really bad that's happened to somebody else and that you witnessed. So, and it's just different forms of user-generated content. So,
A follow-up from that, actually. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I ask one more? It Made My Day I actually thought that was from the producers of FML, which I'll leave that acronym there. But was that a response to FML? Or was
Yeah,
it just
that was
kind of
absolutely a response to FML. The question was IMMD inspired of FML? Yeah, absolutely true. It's like the opposite of FML. All right. So in most cases, the opposite of whatever we're doing tends to be also true, and also appeals to an audience. And that's the thing about this fragmented audience is that if we're doing one thing, we might as well go do the opposite as well. So, yeah. There was a question back there, I think.
Could you please come
How do we prevent abuse? I'll just repeat the question.
Okay,
How do we prevent abuse? Everything that's submitted to our system is seen by a paid moderator. So what we do is we have somebody who screens all the photos as they come in for terms of service violations. It's really expensive to do, and it's really laborious, but I feel like it has a really positive effect on the community. Like, I can't imagine somebody at YouTube doing this because I'm sure they'd be like just bored out of their minds of all the cat videos that come in. But, you know, that's what we do, and it's just part of our culture to actually pay for that service to do it. But yeah, that's how we prevent abuse.
Do we have any other questions from the other offices too? No?
Yes.
Yep, we do actually have. Sorry, question from Ann Arbor.
Go ahead, Ann Arbor.
Oh, great, thanks. Are you planning on expanding your merchandise line at all for Iconhead's Cheeseburger?
I'm sorry,
Are
are we planning on expanding merchandise? Yes, we actually are. Thank you for that segue. I owe you $5. In November, we plan on launching an internet meme T-shirt a day program. So just like shirt.woot, but with internet culture products. So like it's a shirt, like I wish I was wearing one. It's like I've got a red shirt. It's got like Long Cat on one, and it's got like the big towers, like Sears Tower, like Kuala Lumpur Tower, you know, all those things, buildings. And then they'll have their feet, like number of like 2,000 feet or whatever, and then like the Long Cat is like over 9,000 feet. You know, stuff like that. Just internet sub-humor, stuff like that. And we want to just do one T-shirt a day to make it limited. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. So, yeah. You had a question? Yeah, how long can we afford to pay for human moderation? That's a very good question. I think the answer is until we can't. And I really don't know. This is kind of the philosophy of running a company at 30 days at a time, is that, you know, we're small enough where it can be very nimble. And if we feel that the expenses are going out of line, we'll have to figure out an answer. But until we have to do that, we're going to concentrate on what we do best, which is launch new sites. I'm sure somebody somewhere in my office is going to be screaming, going, oh my God, we spent that much on moderation. And then we'll say, okay, let's take a look and see how much of value that is to us. But we don't have any plans to phase it out. In fact, I think we only have plans to increase it to 24 hours coverage, because right now they sit in a queue unless there's a moderator on staff. So there's three shifts of people who look at this stuff every day. So we try to cover as much of the time clock as possible, and we want to expand that. Yes? Where are our visitors coming from? Yeah, we're about 65% United States and 35% international. It tends to do with the fact that we have an English language blog, so unless you understand kind of Western culture and know English well enough, because you have to know English to understand when it's misspelled. And it's weird because you have to know English well enough to understand when things are really misspelled correctly, right? So like Kara Swisher, who's a very famous blogger and reporter for the Wall Street Journal, loves lolcats. She posts lolcats on her blog. So one of the things that we encountered was people would have very interesting misconceived notions about why people misspell things. So one lady came up to me and said, you know, I like your lolcats, but I hate the fact that you assume that my cats can't spell. And my response was, it's not that they can't spell. It's that they choose not to spell like we do because they're better than us. And she's like, oh. I think she had a very, you know, newfound respect for a cat after that. So like Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize winner, of economist, used a lolcat on his blog. And so these are people who are very intelligent. And this is what I tell people. It's like, no, they're not misspelling because they don't know how to spell English. No, it is not a form of Ebonics, which happened, by the way. Somebody called the NAACP and said, lolcats are racist. Yeah, so it's not that. It's actually people who are very smart, who tend to play with language, and that's how they evolve things. So, yeah. Go ahead. That's a very good question. Do we have plans to expand internationally? There were some people who were trying to translate lolcats to Spanish, and I don't know if that worked because it tends to be cultural. Because we focus things at small cultures within a large group, it tends to be very, it's not just a translation that works. It has to match that culture. Lolcats are somewhat known in Japan, but they're not wildly popular in a culture where they love cats, right? There's something interesting about that phenomenon. Why isn't it as popular? They actually have a relatively good grasp of English. It's taught in school. Why not? It's just something that I haven't been able to figure out yet. Yeah.
So I'm interested in your perspective on search. How does one exactly search for a cute picture with misspellings that might not be linked off anywhere on the internet?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I think it's very relevant here. We tend to give it a specific type of nomenclature, or we tend to take a phrase that is used regularly in our culture. So, for example, there I fixed it. What would you search for? Right? Pictures of horrible fix-up jobs. I mean, that's really long. I mean, that's like not something that people think about. But if you give it a name like there, I fixed it, which is a phrase that we would be familiar with in everyday life, right? Or it made my day, right? That's how people search. They look for the name of the blog. And I was talking to Matt Cutts about this, your chief spam cup guy. And one of the things I think he found fascinating was that we don't really care about SEO. Like we own the term lolcat. We own the term cheeseburger, actually. Cheeseburger ranks number 2 for the search for the word funny. Failblog ranks number 3 for the word funny, right? We don't do SEO because organically we have no idea what people are going to call us. So we just try to rank for the term that is the name of the site, which is actually relatively easy to do. Thank you, Google. Like, before you guys were around, I Can Ask Cheeseburger would never have taken off, right? Before search was actually this effective, no one was going to search for I can what? No one knew our name, yet people found us. And that's through the power of search. Like if you type in anything remotely close to I Can Ask Cheeseburger, like remotely close, we has a cheeseburger, like you end up on I Can Ask Cheeseburger. So thank you. Long-winded way of saying thank you for that. So by the way, we have books for GraphJam, Fail Blog, and I Can Ask Cheeseburger if you want to buy them. There's also Happy Cats, the cat that spawned it all, with a little stuffed animal version of that. So MJ's here to take your order if you'd like them. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Great. Thank you very much.